We're going to now have an opportunity for some discussion with the panel, and we will begin with that, and then we'll open up for some additional questions from the participants online. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like to enter into the chat, we will be monitoring those. And but I'll begin with a couple of questions for our panelists. And the first one I'd like to direct to Gary. And so Gary, just from your perspective, you've worked extensively in the nonprofit and the for-profit environment. Can you tell me if there's differences in diversity initiatives that are different in the aging services space, in the nonprofit space, than they would be in the corporate environment? I think,
can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll be candid. In my housing days, I go to a conference. If you're serving very low income people, national conference, probably 25% to 30% of those in the room would be persons of color. I'm not referring to just board members, I'm referring to the leadership of these organizations. And when I came into this workforce space, the older space, I've been to all the conferences, but my first one was, I was astounded at the lack of diversity among those who were present at almost all the Asian conferences. I can sometimes count the number of people of color in the room on both hands, right? So I'm often taken aback by the lack of representation, given the population that many of us serve. And that can be fixed, right? I think boards have to challenge their assumptions about how they think about their organizations, the kinds of leadership they want to bring in. I think hiring managers have to stop hiring their what I call their happy hour buddy, which means that a young person who is in, 35-year-old person who's a manager is an opening, and who are they going to hire from a slate of candidates? They invariably will hire the person they think they can hang out with on a Friday for happy hour. We hire images of ourselves subconsciously. That too has to be fixed. And what diversity does is it infuses in culture a certain kind of knowledge about things about the organizations, how we deliver programs that are sensitive and sensitized to specific audiences. I think diversity is a big problem across the sector, and we owe it to ourselves as leaders to do what we can to try and address that thoughtfully. And thoughtfully, by saying that, thoughtfully is not just about the scholarship program. Thoughtfully is how do we create a pipeline of candidates that best represents our core values? How do we identify people on staff that we are prepared to bet on? And I was one of those fortunate few who early in my career, a few people betted on, and some took risks. And so leadership is about creating an environment to help foster growth and opportunity, but also to have an creation of culture that reflects the audiences we try to serve.
Thank you. So let's take a step back and look at sort of in our theme here, and that the Older Americans Act requires providers to target services to older adults with the greatest economic and social needs, with particular attention to minority populations. How do your programs put that in action? And what are some examples of some success stories that you can point to in your organizations in reaching populations that would have been previously underserved? And I'll open this to the group.
We've had great success with going directly to churches. And that was also true when I was in California and we were doing outreach to the Hispanic population. But South Carolina truly is the Bible Belt. And if you want people to participate in your programs and your services, their church and their pastor have to trust you almost first. Either that or their neighbor has to already be trusting you. This is a who you know state. It's not the same as a big urban area. You know, you usually get asked two questions when you move here: who your people are and what church do you go to. So our outreach has to go along those same lines if we want to have any success with it.
Great insight. Anyone else?
Sure. So many of our sites are located in urban areas. So a lot of it is just word of mouth, but our case managers also do active outreach on the streets. Active outreach to those who are unhoused. We also partner with a lot of organizations at housing navigation sites, at shelters, and at other community centers so that we are able to reach those diverse and underserved populations. We really try to hire staff members that reflect the clients that we serve too. So we have a very diverse group of case managers and social workers, and we also take language capabilities into factor too to make sure that we're able to communicate effectively with all of the seniors we serve.
Great. Very good.
I think that this is Larry. I was just thinking about a lot of these issues, and I think in terms of the population that we serve, one of the things that seems to continue to happen is that there is a misunderstanding of the relationship between Title III and Title VI of the Older Americans Act. Title VI, when it was originally passed, said that services that are provided under the Title VI program should be comparable to those under Title III. And comparability, from my perspective, has been not the same. We still have a long ways to go. And so one of the things that we try to do is to reach out to the states and let them know that there is no prohibition between Title III and Title VI programs coordinated with each other and the populations that are out there. And so that has been one way that we have been pushing. And in some areas of the country, it has worked very well. For example, in Arizona, how they solved that problem back in the old days was they just created an area agency composed of the 23 tribes in the state of Arizona. And the organization is the Arizona Intertribal Council. And they are providing services, and they have done a very good job. They have developed model programs. For example, their ombudsman program, their guardianship program in the state of Arizona is just phenomenal. What they do, how they do it, and how they've collaborated with the state of Arizona. In different parts of the country, however, there's still that, well, they have their Title VI program and they won't let us go on the reservation. And I'm saying, no, you can go on the reservation. But what usually happens is they don't understand the tribal hierarchy. The tribal hierarchy starts with the tribal chairman or the tribal president and the tribal council. They're the governing body. If they were to meet with those people starting at that level, rather than dealing with the program directors, they're going at the wrong place. In outside the reservation, out of Indian country, you can go to a program director and say, I'd like to work with you. And they say, sure, fine, no problem. Let's figure out how we can do it. But at the tribal level, it's totally different. You start at the top and then you work your way down once you can gain access. And again, I think one of the things that we try to do and inform people is, people like in some of the states that I've worked in and seen and worked on behalf of have said, oh yeah, we went out to this particular tribe last year and they didn't call us back. Yeah. And I keep telling them, you can't go out there just one time and think trust is developed. You've got to go back again and again and again to convey the idea that you are committed, that you are sincere. And I share as an example, in Gallup, New Mexico, there are maybe 20, 25 businesses, pawn shops in Gallup, New Mexico. People on the reservation go to these pawn shops to pawn their valuables so they have money. They call it the Navajo Bank. And so they go there, they pawn their stuff, and they trust the pawnbrokers to hang on to their stuff. But those pawnbrokers have been there for years and years and years and have developed that trust among Indians. And they have programs and services in the Older Americans Act have to take the same approach. They have to go out again and again and again. When I was the area agency planner in Tucson, Arizona, the program director was a lady by the name of Marian Lupu. And Marian said to me, oh, Larry, you're an Indian. Go out and talk to those Indians over there. They were called the Papagos back then. They're not called Tohono O'odham. Go out to those Tohono O'odhams and talk to them in their language, because you're an Indian, you can talk Indian to them. And I said, Marian, I'm a Navajo. They're Papagos. We have two different languages. And even among tribes, there's still that level of distrust. Papagos will look at a Navajo and they go, oh, you're a member of the Navajo Nation. And I think that in South Dakota, there's also the same kind of rivalry among tribes, different parts of the country. And they need to understand that just because one tribe said it's okay, the other one might not be that receptive and be more distrustful. History in Indian country plays a major part in how they view people coming in from the outside. They've been taken advantage of way too many times to say, okay, I'm going to trust you this time. So I think that's one of the things that we try to do is to work with the AG network inform of these unique differences and cultural differences in Indian country. And in those places where it has worked, Arizona is a fantastic example of how things can be done. So that would be my part of my comment anyway.
If I can say something, Mr. Moderator. We live at a time when we have two forces converging, have converged at the same time. And those forces have created a once-in-a-generational opportunity to gain a set of acceptance within new audiences who may be of value to us. COVID-19 has illuminated the health disparities in this country, and in particular, how it affects African Americans, older African Americans. Black Lives Matter speaks to our nation's inability, historical inability, to address the issue of race. Corporate America is signing checks by the hundreds of millions of dollars every week to support a response to Black Lives Matter. I'll guarantee you, none of those funds are flowing into our network. And COVID-19, same thing. It's a health issue, no funding. Today, African American net worth is roughly 10, for a family of four, is roughly 10% of that of a white family. The Boston Globe had an article 2 weeks ago that said the net worth of a black family in Boston was $8. Average black family. Housing. African American home ownership rate today is around 45%. It's exactly the same rate it was in 1968 when they passed the Fair Housing Act. Right? So we all live in a time that has unique opportunities. And the question for us is, how are we going to take advantage of that? So my example is, I never talk about titles. Title 3, 5, 6, I don't care. Because the outside world has no clue. I can't go to the Ford Foundation and talk in acronyms. I will lose them in 30 minutes, in 30 seconds. And then I'll be shown the door. So we need to have a narrative that speaks to the unique voices of different audiences. In the philanthropy world, we've got to find our voice. We've got to reimagine how we see ourselves and what are the unique value propositions that we can offer that they haven't heard. And that's how you find the key. That's how you turn people's attention. And hopefully that's how we find the fun. Okay? Also, look at different kinds of partnerships. Right? So I talk to all the chambers of commerce. I talk to all the national trade associations in Washington that works with employers. National Association of Manufacturers, National Retail. I talk to all of them. Because ultimately the program that Larry and I connected through CSAP has for over 60 years emphasized community service. It really emphasized employment. And so what I have still sought to do with CSAP as a program is not to speak to our employers about our participants. I try to speak to our employers that we have a pool of job seekers. And by changing around how we view the program, we are allowing ourselves to at least have a voice at the table among networks who may be assistance.
Caller 25, could you please mute yourself? We can hear your conversation.
All right, thank you. So some great insight, and we're coming up close to our time. I want to take the opportunity to thank Edwin and Larry and Melinda and Gary and Linda for being part of this today. And I want to leave us with one more question as sort of for final thoughts from each of you. As we continue to have conversations about racial unrest and some of the challenges of the disparities and the inequities in our communities, and we know there are dialogues like this one that are going on all over the country with a lot of different groups. What are the conversations that you think are important for substantive change? And what do you hope to see in the future? And I'll leave that and ask each of you to respond to that, and that will conclude our discussion. So, and Edwin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I've got another call in 1 minute. So they have to have multicultural conversations that include the diversity of our network and the diversity of our country.
Thank you. Larry.
I ditto of Edwin. I think this is a journey. We're at the very beginning. And we have to be optimistic. But to be optimistic, we have to be inclusive.
I think that one of the things that I really stress in terms of how we work is that in Indian country, we've been here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our country. The land that you walk on is the dust of our ancestors. Treat it with respect. It's sacred land. Our languages, our history, traditions are important. And that's what the rest of the non-Indian world needs to understand. And we will be here years and years and years from now. And I say from time to time, if they were to put me into, freeze me and put me into a capsule and woke me up 1,500 years from now, and who opens that capsule? If that person comes out looking like Gary or looking like Gene, and they said to me, Yat e shiche, that would mean, hello, Grandpa. I will know that we were successful in preserving our way of life.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Melinda? Linda?
Sure, yeah. I think we need to make a concerted effort to have much more diversity in our leadership. And I do think it's critical that we look at funding at all levels of government, local, state, and federal, and really looking at where that money is going to and really where it should go to. And then again, lastly, just engaging folks like our civic engagement seniors and our community members that have these lived experiences who can help guide us as we continue to expand our programs and our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with all of what everybody has already said, but I would also like to add one thing. I truly think that diversity and breaking down barriers happens one person at a time between people, and that we need to, as leaders in our field or as members of our community, we need to take a leadership role in encouraging that and helping people to really understand and appreciate the value of every single individual that they meet up with. And once you get to a lot of making things better is just simply understanding each other, caring about each other, and appreciating each other. So,
absolutely.
And thank you all for everything that you've said.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to Bob and Meredith from NANASP for their support in putting the program together. Thank you, Gene Hoban, for writing the technology for us today and keeping us moving along. And thank you for everyone who called in. We will have the recording of this available, and we'll be sharing that back out as well as the information that was presented in the slide. And keep an eye out for that survey for follow-up. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Thank you for your interest in diversity and equity and inclusion and making it a part of your conversation today as part of the Aging Services Network. And with that, everyone have a wonderful afternoon.